I've never really been interested in any sports. I'm more of a gamer. But Haikyuu being a shonen jump title and having heard great things, I went into it blind and came out the other side grinning from ear to ear. Haikyuu was a show that I did not expect to love. I expected to like it, but it ended up being so much better than I could have initially imagined. If there's one thing that I really love about Haikyuu, it's the character writing. The characters in this series are some of the most developed and progressed that I've ever seen. So much so that I struggle to even pick a favorite of the main cast. But if there's one who took time to grow on me, it's Kei Tsukishima. I didn't really like Tsukishima for the longest time, but by season 3, he'd slowly grown on me. In today's video, I want to talk about how my least favorite character in Haikyuu has my favorite arc. In order to discuss the arc that this character goes through, we must first answer the question, who is Kei Tsukishima? Kei Tsukishima is a first-year student at Karasuno High School and a member of the Karasuno High Volleyball Club. It's also implied that he played volleyball in middle school. At the start of the story, Tsukishima is used as a semi-antagonistic entity. He's the polar opposite of the starry-eyed shonen protagonist. He's not quite Hinata's rival because he doesn't really seem to have an ambition of his own. For a fair part of the early portion of Haikyuu, Tsukishima is characterized as pessimistic, blunt, and vaguely apathetic. He enjoys laughing at the embarrassment and humiliation of others, but refuses to be anyone else's entertainment. Whether or not his team wins or loses their matches isn't really a concern to him. He's just here to play some volleyball and pass some time after school. He takes their matches seriously, but only to a certain extent. Any more and it would seem like he cares. And he doesn't. Or so we're led to believe. It isn't just that Tsukishima doesn't care about volleyball. It's that despite his love for the game, he refuses to let himself show passion for it out of fear. His older brother poured his heart and soul into volleyball, only to be a bench warmer throughout his entire high school career. Tsukishima's brother, Akiteru, was never good enough to be a starting member of his team, and subconsciously, Kei is afraid that if he lets himself become invested, that he'll only end up being hurt just like his brother. Because of this, he decides early on that he won't be playing volleyball when he goes to college, and is happy to just play out the rest of his games in high school, and then leave volleyball behind for good. I believe that there's a short cycle that one experiences when learning a new skill. The first phase of the cycle is the honeymoon phase. Everything about this new hobby is fun and interesting. Learning about it is fun, improving at it is fun, and this phase can last for a long time. But if you keep investing time into this hobby, eventually you reach the second phase that I like to call hitting the wall. Eventually, you come to the realization that if you want to improve at this skill or hobby, whatever it is, you're going to have to invest a notable amount of time and effort into improving. This is where it's easy to just give up on improving skills. You sort of just decide that you don't have room in your life to dedicate any more of your time to this thing, and you settle for staying at the level that you're at. But if this thing means a lot to you, then you will put in the effort to break through the wall. And when you do, you reach the third and final phase before the cycle starts anew. I didn't really think of a name for this phase, but it's where you start to apply your improved skill and start reaping the benefits. For example, if the thing you've been trying to improve at is a ranked online video game, then this is where all the grinding pays off and you finally rank up. And all over again, the honeymoon phase begins. You have a great time, you're able to appreciate this thing on a slightly higher level, but eventually you hit another wall and you once again have to decide whether or not you care to improve further. By season 3, Tsukishima has once again hit the wall for volleyball. Against Shiratorizawa and the Goliath that is Wakatoshi Ushijima, Tsukishima is quickly realizing that he's not quite on their level. If he wants to improve, he's going to have to practice more and learn new strategies to help him block more efficiently. But why would he do that? He had already decided that he isn't going to play volleyball in college. What would be the point of putting in all this time and effort into an after-school hobby that he isn't going to pursue as a career? In, say, 5 years, none of this will matter to him. Volleyball will just be a game he used to play in high school. During the match between Karasuno and Shiratorizawa, Tsukki has a moment in the spotlight that none of us Haikyuu fans will ever forget. Tsukishima at this point still isn't truly invested in the sport of volleyball. He likes it enough to compete at a high school level, but has no plans to continue pursuing it in the future. And then, in a moment that leads to pure shock and awe, for the first time in the match, Tsukishima manages to successfully shut down a full power spike from Wakatoshi Ushijima by pinpointing the spot he's most likely to aim for. There's no downplaying what he's just done here. Ushijima is predicted to thrive in the pro scene, and his school, Shiratorizawa, is predicted to not only win this match, but the national tournament as well. In this moment, everything changes. Tsukishima has just become hooked on volleyball, and it feels incredible. For the first time in his life, he decides to truly and honestly give himself to the sport, and he lets out a victory shout for the feat he's just accomplished. From this point on, Tsukishima is finally just as dedicated to winning their matches as the rest of his team. He's just experienced the feeling necessary to encourage him to continue improving and to overcome his next wall. This was an arc that spanned over the course of the entire series. Watching Tsukki slowly become more receptive to his team and take volleyball more seriously is what endears people to him in the first place. And this moment is the climax we've been waiting 3 seasons for. The reason I call Tsukishima my least favorite character is not because I think he's a badly written one, nor do I even dislike him. My main reasoning for placing him in my mental bottom tier is just because of how boring he can come across as. If you've seen some of my other videos, then you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but I don't particularly like stoic characters. Characters that don't react strongly to things simply bore me. I like characters who feel things, who express those things, and have things to say. But in a case like this, Haikyuu has done something incredible. It has taken a character who normally wouldn't react strongly or loudly, and given him a series-wide arc that causes his walls of stoicism to begin to crumble down. And it's beautiful.
I'm more of a gamer.
For example, if the thing you've been trying to improve at is a ranked online video game, then this is where all the grinding pays off and you finally rank up. I want to talk about something completely different for a moment. I promise this is relevant to the video, just bear with me. In May of 2016, an online first-person shooter video game was released to the public by the name of Overwatch. It was sort of unlike anything gamers had seen before. Of course, there were naysayers who called it a Team Fortress 2 ripoff, but Overwatch had a level of polish and character that blew TF2 out of the water. It wasn't quite that the type of game that it was fully unique, but that no other game within that team shooter genre had produced something so full of life and vibrance. The playable characters were all insanely cool and brimming with personality, even the robots. My older brother had bought the game at launch and had been playing it non-stop. Both of us were still in school at the time, but every hour of free time that he had was spent playing Overwatch. He wouldn't stop bugging me about it. Every conversation we had eventually turned into, "Dude, you gotta start playing Overwatch, it's so much fun." And so, somewhere in maybe June or July of 2016, during my summer break before 9th grade, I purchased Overwatch, and I loved it. Just like my brother, I became obsessed with this game. Every character had a fresh, unique design and playstyle. All the maps were gorgeously designed and fun to explore, and the community was so welcoming and fun-loving. It seemed like people didn't even care about winning or losing, really. We were all just having a blast. For the next 4 years that followed, Overwatch kind of dominated my life. However, although I kept up with every new update and the community, with each passing year, it seemed like I spent less and less time actually playing the game. I began my Overwatch competitive career at the Platinum rank and had slowly climbed all the way up to Grandmaster. For those who don't know, Grandmaster is the highest rank in the game. It was certainly something to be proud of, but I couldn't help but feel like I still wasn't good enough. I may have reached Grandmaster, but I was only barely scratching the surface. The best players in the world had ranks around 46 to 4700, whereas I had barely managed to hit 4K. Most of my games were more so around the 3800 region, and eventually, I realized it. I'd hit a wall. If I wanted to improve, I would have had to practice more and learn new strategies and aim more efficiently. But why would I do that? I had already decided that I wasn't going to try to be a pro player. What would be the point of putting in all this time and effort into an after-school hobby that I wasn't going to pursue as a career? In, say, 5 years, none of this will matter to me. Overwatch will just be a game I used to play in high school. When I watched Haikyuu and I saw what Tsukishima was experiencing, even if I didn't realize it consciously, I was watching what it looks like when you find the motivation to keep pursuing that hobby. The feeling of, what's the point in trying, is one that I never found my solution to. I never found a reason to keep going. I felt like there was no point to keep playing since I'd already reached the highest rank. But the reason to keep going is something so simple, because it's something you enjoy doing. Even if Tsukishima doesn't keep playing in the future, it's something he enjoys doing now, and that's reason enough to give it his all. Admittedly, in my case, it could be said that I wasn't necessarily enjoying the game anymore, and that quitting was ultimately the right decision, but the point is that because of my 4-year experience with Overwatch, I was able to relate to Tsukishima's narrative arc on a deeply personal level, despite the fact that I'm still not a huge fan of his personality. I'm more of a Sugawara kind of guy. Haikyuu has a lot of both character development and progression, but out of all the character arcs we see, this is the one that hit me the hardest. And this, my friends, is why I believe that Haikyuu's worst character has the best arc.